Everyone, here's another installment of Find Your Film, my Find Your Film podcast. I am a little bit nervous, even though I'm a podcaster, because my BFF is here. Deandra Miranda, welcome to Find Your Film. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
I'm doing a silent clap because I don't like the audio. So, Deandra, you just purchased a Blue Yeti mic. This is your first podcast mic. What are you thinking? You already sounded good without the mic when we taped, I believe, a little bit of a podcast for the whale, but do you notice a difference with the microphone right now? Starter mic.
I don't, but I feel very official.
You don't? How dare you? You better. It's all visual with you, right?
No, listen. I mean, I feel very official. I feel like I'm an ultimate podcaster now, but I don't see the difference. But maybe at the final product, I'll hear the difference. So seeing and hearing are different.
Yes. And I'll get back to me whether you hear the difference. By the way, you sound great. On our Zoom, there's going to be a mute button that I'm not going to put on you because I want more of you on this podcast than me, but I'm going to mute because this old man might cough during our review. So if you see me muted, don't get too scared because I'm going to watch. Like right now, I'm going to mute it because I think I'm going to cough right now. Watch. And listeners, I apologize for this little edit. Okay, I'm back. So do you know what we're here for? This movie called Midnight Cowboy. Okay. And it's a movie that I haven't seen. Deandra, first off, we're going to talk about the new documentary about Midnight Cowboy. It's called Desperate Souls, Dark City, and the Legend of Midnight Cowboy. Before we dive into that documentary, what is your experience with that movie while I quickly press the mute button again and I drink some water? So your experience and thoughts of Midnight Cowboy, the first time you saw it.
Actually, I don't even know how I really stumbled upon it. I was wildly impressed by it. It gave me that very gritty and raw type of environment of New York City. I feel like especially Midnight Cowboy was released in 1969, I believe. The thing I like about the movies is it's very similar to Taxi Driver. It was like that grittiness, and they definitely said something in the documentary where I think at that time, late 50s, early 60s, everyone was trying to glamorize New York City still. It was like that Breakfast at Tiffany's. It was just like all these type of, it's so beautiful to live here. Everything's great. And I just feel like from the opening scene to the entire way that the movie's filmed, even to, when Dustin Hoffman we can see he gets stricken with a little bit of an ailment, it's like that raw, it's sweaty, it's hot, it just really showed that grittiness that didn't really glamorize New York. And I feel like it was a movie very similar to Taxi Driver where it really honed in on the really negative underbelly of what Times Square used to be. That was a really epicenter of debauchery, kind of like nomadic people who are lost. And I think that everyone comes, and I remember in the documentary, again, we're going to get into that, but they were, John Voight and other commentators were saying is New York, for many people, you come here with a dream and, you think it's going to like welcome you with open arms and everything. And New York gut punched at a lot of people. And I've been here for a little over a decade. And it's just, you come here and you'll start to notice that people will either they won't make it or they will make it, or there's some people who have to unfortunately like come into some desperate times and desperate measures. So I feel like every New Yorker, whether you had these personal experiences of Midnight Cowboy, is you definitely know how it feels to completely get slapped in the face by New York, and it doesn't give you a hug back afterwards. And it kind of is one of those things where you're like, do I really want to stay here? Like, is this a lifelong decision I want to make? Is this really part of like, do I have the tenacity to stick through it? And I think that's why they say, New York either swallows you whole or it spits you out. And everyone just has a journey where I think everybody, including myself, came here thinking it was gonna be a lot easier. And then I always say it's like, loving your captor, where I can't imagine living anywhere else because it's beat my ass for so many years. I don't think I'd be happy, or I don't even think I know a different life than to just be like a big person who like hits the pavement.
Well, let's say a couple of just shop talk here regarding the Oscars. It's a 1969 movie. It was initially rated X, had a bunch of controversy. Amidst all the controversy, however, it won Best Picture at the 1970 Oscars. The director, John Schlesinger, I believe, won an Oscar as well. So, and then also Waldo Salt, the screenwriter, was the winner that year for Midnight Cowboy. Are the gut punches that you've received over the last decade worth another 10 years in New York, Deandra Miranda, or are you still pondering the thought? Living in the city, everyone says New York City is the best city to live, but is it worth all the gut punches? Because in this movie, we see Joe Buck, played by Jon Voight, and Ratso Rizzo, or Rico Rizzo, as he liked to be called, they suffer a lot. Is it worth it for you for another 10 years?
What's interesting about New York is you really don't know. There's some days I wake up and you're just like, why do I live here? The rent hikes, it's dirty, there's crime. It's a beautiful place. But then there's times where I think, I don't know if I'd be happy anywhere else. I feel like even in my 10 years of being here, I don't think I'll ever know if it's forever, but I guarantee I will probably be here for another 10 years. And you can ask me again in 10 years and I'll still say, I don't know, but somehow you just stay here. And you are here. And I am a New Yorker and I can't imagine anywhere else. But there are times where I'm like, I wonder, I'm like, do I just love the pain? Is that what love is? Love is pain.
Love might be pain. Well, love might be pain regarding this movie. And if you guys don't know what Midnight Cowboy is about, maybe that's understandable. Some of you have not seen this movie. Most of you have, though. Jon Voight plays Joe Buck. The movie starts with him, I believe, in Texas. He looks like your very good-looking, 6-foot-plus, strapping blonde guy, looking like the cowboy from some kind of Marlboro ad, but he doesn't have any. I don't think he smokes too much in this movie, but he looks like a very clean-cut cowboy. He boards a bus to New York from Texas. I initially thought, when I was thinking of Midnight Cowboy, you've been talking about New York for the first segment of this podcast, Deandra. The first, I think, 12 to 15 minutes has him on the bus, getting to know the people, realizing how long it takes him to commute from Texas via bus to New York. When he gets to New York, he's set up in a seemingly okay hotel. It's a high rise and everything's okay. Maybe he has his money in his suitcase. His first couple of days are kind of okay. He wants to make it as a male hustler. And along the way, he meets a lot of elderly women or middle-aged elderly women. He thinks he's going to pull the con on them. I'm not going to give too much away. Let's just say a lot of these women he seduces doesn't lead him to a road of riches, hence the struggle in New York. Helping him in that struggle is, I guess, either his BFF, his best friend, or his convenient friend, Ratso Rizzo, played by Dustin Hoffman. We'll get to the documentary in a second, Dee, but what did you love the most about this movie? For me, it was seeing the friendship of Joe Buck and Ratso Rizzo and seeing them struggle through. And it really felt like you were in New York. I mean, you don't know this. I was in New York for most of the 90s on a lot of press junket trips. So in the 90s, it was maybe only 25, 26 years removed. And you said Times Square was at what, epicenter of what, darkness or nightmares? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was still pretty dirty in Times Square. When you, I guess, moved 10 years ago, they had cleaned up Times Square a lot better than in the 90s, or in this case, 1969. But going to Midnight Cowboy, before we get to the doc, why is this movie such a classic in your eyes?
I didn't realize it had a lot of underlining messages. And I revisited the movie again, as well as when I saw the documentary. And I just didn't realize that it was very provocative and it had this really weird underbelly of like homoeroticness, and it seemed like there was a lot of challenges. And what I loved about it is, especially we talked about Waldo Salto, he was exiled from Hollywood for about 10 years because they thought he was a communist. They thought he was part of the Communist Party because he was a political unconventional writer, and he had an opinion. And then, you have someone like we said, Jerome Helms, I believe, right?
Yeah, let me see. I think James Leo Harley. I think, let me look it up right now. But the writer, the book, the writer who penned the book, right?
Yes. But
James Leo Harley. Leo Harley. Yeah.
And the same. I mean, I believe he was in the closet as well. As like, I just didn't realize that there were so many things. It was really tied into like the Vietnam War as well. And what I didn't realize, and what I did notice rewatching it, was the same with you. I kind of loved their friendship. I think it really shocked me because, as we say, Joe comes here really bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, but he is trying to convey something that everyone knows he's not. He's not a cowboy. I don't really think he smokes in the movie. I think he just has a cigarette in his mouth. Like, he's just very transparent to, I feel like, the modern day New Yorker, or even back then. But he comes in thinking that he's going to wind up and rule these women. And what he's really realizing is he sticks out like a sore thumb. And he felt like he stuck out as a sore thumb back in his small town, but he fit in, that doe-eyed, fresh face. And then he comes to New York and it's almost like he's too refreshed to like be here. You know, you could definitely tell that person just came here. He's smiling, he's chippery. He still has that glow about him. And I feel like as the movie, continues to move forward, is you could tell that when Ratso and Joe, they become like, they strike up this friendship, is they realize that they really need each other. And I think that both of them are very strong on their own. But when you're that strong, making it by yourself in a big major city, that is very, very hard. I think that we've learned is everyone, they want a friend. Friendship is really, really important to survival. I think having that little escapism for them to be like, we're going to make this together. And you start to realize that they really, really need each other. So they both seem like they came to the city, making it on their own, proving to themselves and proving to the world that they're this big, powerful person. And at the end of the day, they realize they're human and they really can't do it alone. And we just see a really unconventional friendship. They come from completely different backgrounds. They look completely different. They feel completely different. But what I loved is there's like that really sweet compassion where, you could say the Ratso is really hardened, but he has this compassion where he's like, I don't want you to go through the same mistakes as me. And then Joe at the same time is he's a little naive, where Ratso is kind of like, hey, calm down, because you're going to burn yourself out if you don't understand kind of how to play the game, So they are two polar opposites, but they're very polarizing together.
Yeah, I really love also, there's so many bad things that happen in the movie, but one of the most powerful moments is a costume change sequence, which is just within a split second. And it's towards, I'm not going to say when it happens, but it deals with one important character. I'll just say Joe Buck, when he does a little bit of a quick change and you realize, wow, that's cool. And that's just so moving, because you realize he's sort of kind of coming to his own. He's becoming the Joe Buck he always wants to be. And the way John Schlesinger shot it, he didn't concentrate like, oh, look at me, look at this scene. This is a very flashy scene. It's just a split second moment. And it just, I don't know if it happened for you, but it just really made me feel really good. And it's a very powerful moment. So
I think we're talking about the same scene. It's at the very end.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was the same thing. It was something where I was like, he parted with something I never thought he'd part with. That's what I'll tell you. And that's something that I think was very, very symbolic, super symbolic, being like, you know what? I thought that this was my identity. And it seemed like when he did that change and he removed a specific thing, it just looked like this freedom that washed over him.
Yeah, and it's a scene that didn't really call attention to itself. It's just happened along the framework of the day-to-day life of Joe Buck and Ratso Rizzo. But anyways, look, let's get to the documentary, Desperate Souls, Dark City, and the Legend of Midnight Cowboy. Specifically, this is actually time-sensitive podcast because it hits theaters in your neck of the woods, in New York, in my neck of the woods, LA, Friday, June 23rd, specifically at the Laemmle Town. I'm going to start with LA first because I'm very selfish, Deandra. It's going to be in LA at the Laemmle Royal, and then at the Laemmle Town Center 5. And then in New York, it will be playing, I don't know if you've been there, it's going to be playing at the Film Forum at 209 West Houston Street. So I don't know if you know.
We call it Houston Street.
Oh, it's spelled Houston. Houston Street.
Houston.
I have glaucoma. Don't make fun of my handicap. We're just talking about empathy.
I'm just joking.
Is it really Houston? It's not really Houston. It's Houston.
It's Houston Street.
Houston,
yeah.
Okay. Don't you ever correct me ever again.
Right. This is a pushy New Yorker now. Who I became. I've lost my identity.
Yes. You're going to
I used to be so nice. I used to be like, excuse me, it's Paul. And I was like, no, get it right.
Okay. 209 West Houston Street in New York Film Forum. So it's going to be playing there. My question to you, D, is Desperate Souls, Dark City, and the Legend of Midnight Cowboy, is it better if you watch it immediately before going into the doc, or you have to be a fan? What happens if you're just going to, is there a prohibitive situation regarding watching this documentary? Like, must you love Midnight Cowboy to see this documentary?
No, actually, I think it was one of the few documentaries I've actually seen that's been based on the lives and the creative process of a film being made, that it actually has so much meat of the movie. I'm not saying you should not see the movie, because I think the movie is completely amazing and it's really profound now that, you know, we're in 2023 and there's just like there's so many controversies that we're still struggling with. And it's just crazy how that movie was in 69, we're in 2023, and there's still this weirdness about sexuality on TV and this and that and everything.
Social inequalities, right?
Yes, yes. And, you know, power struggle and money and just like it's so crazy after all these years, we're still having the same topics of conversations, and it still makes people a little squirmish. It's like very, very interesting. But no, I think that the documentary had a lot of meat. I think that what I loved about the documentary is it had so many highlights, but it had highlights from like everyone who was involved with it. I thought it was going to be a documentary kind of based on the actors. And what I kind of like it was more the documentary based on like the back of the house, from like the writers, the adapted screenplay, to the director, to the producer, to the, you know, the score, everything. And I thought that was kind of cool, where it kind of highlighted, and I feel like it kind of is coming out this perfect timing because the writer's strike, but it kind of highlighted of like how important and influential movies in the movie creators are, as well as, you know, the actors. I feel like a lot of movies nowadays, like actors drive products and alcohol in movies. And back then it was like, I just thought it was really profound. Like the amazing lineup that they had, everyone involved with that film were really, really influential in their own way. And I believe this was the first movie that really put them on the map, where they all were doing singular things, but it was kind of a little artsy, a little independent. And this was kind of like a full-on feature studio production that I don't think they were a part of before.
Yeah, you know what? You're right. I never thought of it that way, because you get to learn a little bit about, like you said, screenwriter Waldo Salt. His daughter Jennifer Salt was in the movie. She had a very prominent role as one of the former lovers of Buck, Mr. Buck,
and they dated in real life too.
Yeah, and they date
after the movie.
Yeah, you learned about they dated in real life, and I think most importantly, I think the biggest star of this movie, I think to your point, is the director John Schlesinger. He was about coming out and finding his way into, after the success of Midnight Cowboy, instead of doing a big budget movie like a war movie or a big movie that'll really do well at the box office, he does a gay themed film, Sunday Bloody Sunday, a couple of years later. And it's very interesting. And especially, I'm a cinephile, but I learned a lot about John Schlesinger. So you were actually,
exact same. I didn't know that much about him, and I just thought it was crazy how he went literally from like independent documentary type of things. Right. They weren't as provocative, but I feel like it was, I had no idea how much he really did. He just jumped in. And especially with the rated X, you know, there was a pivotal moment I remember when the studios, and I believe it was, what is it? Who gives the rating? Like the Screen Actors Guild, or
I think MBAA, I guess, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Right? When they give the X. Yeah.
And they were actually the ones who were like, if you shave off 5 minutes, because there's one particular scene in there, and when you see the documentary, you'll hear it. And it was one scene that they were like, if you just edit this off, which literally just shaved off like 5 minutes, like it wasn't a huge scene, but this one particular act in the scene that they did, it was like, you can't show this. It's just way too much for the times. And they said, we will take the X because we feel like we don't need to take out any part of this movie. And I mean, like, for someone to have like a studio budget and have the studio executives on their back, and for someone to say like, you know, your movie will hit a broader audience, and for someone to say, absolutely not my vision, I stand with it, I think is just, it's revolutionary. And I feel like it speaks to how much the arts are really important to stay authentically to yourself.
Yeah, no, exactly. Schlesinger, very authentic. And here's the thing, I'm very inauthentic, and I'll tell you why. Because back in the mid-90s, I actually interviewed John Schlesinger, had a one-on-one with him. I believe, I think it's, I forgot what movie. I think he did this movie called Cold Comfort Farm. I could be wrong. Had a one-on-one with him, very nice guy. After the interview, I said to myself, I can't wait to watch Midnight Cowboy. After the interview, I'm going to watch it. I really loved his movie. I got to watch more of his stuff. Almost 30 years later, it took me almost 30 years to actually watch Midnight Cowboy, when I think you probably watched it years ago, maybe when you were in your 20s or your teens, the first time you saw it.
You know, what's odd is, I think back on this, I really think the first time I watched it had to at least be 2 years ago, or within the last year.
Right.
I don't know how, I don't know why. You know, we're both movie buffs, and I feel like I love to kind of see movies that I haven't seen before. I'm a big fan of the Film Forum and the Angelica in here, and, you know, the Paris Theater and all that. But yeah, it just kind of came up, and I thought it was really it was amazing. And the cool thing about it, even after, is it kind of made both of them a household name, where right after, I believe, Midnight Cowboy, that's when John Schlesinger, he actually casted Dustin Hoffman in Marathon Man.
Yeah, several years later. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for mentioning that movie. That movie's giving me nightmares. I remembered Marathon, since I'm so old, I'm probably almost twice your age. I think Marathon Man came out either 76 or 77, and it was on cable. And I was only 6 or 7. And I watched a little bit of it on cable. And I still haven't seen that movie, the full movie, because as a kid, I was terrified by Marathon Man. And I don't want to go back and recall my childhood in New York, watching it somewhere in Queens and being absolutely mortified. So
that's how I was with some reason why, like the Manchurian Candidate when I was younger.
Oh yeah.
I always thought that, and like Citizen Kane, like the way they were shot, and like it was just very cold. I mean, you and I went to go see, was it Shock Therapy or
Shock Corridor directed by Sam Fuller.
Sam Fuller. It was those were very similar. They're very eerie, cold, industrial. Like you could just feel the steel, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was younger, the same thing. I don't think I could finish it because I was just like, I was very confused with what
was going on because you were young, kind of thing.
It was just like this weird backstabby, odd, like that, that now we call it like a psychological thriller, but it always made me feel like I didn't know who to trust, and it was a little unsettling.
Yeah. Well, speaking of unsettling, this documentary is very unsettling, but I think, like, I'm glad that you're recommending it. I'm recommending it as well. I'm going to go from the press release because they say it even better than I could. I'm not going to put words in your mouth and say they're doing it as better than you can right now. But at 101 minutes, it says press release. This is not a documentary about the making of Midnight Cowboy. It is about the deeply gifted and flawed people behind a dark and difficult masterpiece. New York City in a troubled time of cultural ferment. So just almost wrapping things up, it's really worth watching it, I guess in your terms, at the Film Forum, because it's not just about the movie, it's about the fabric of everything around it. You're thinking it was kind of value added that way, Dee?
Honestly, I'm always going to be movie buff. I think especially when you come to like these type of masterpieces, is I like to have the experience. I'm very old school still. I love going to the theater and still like smelling that popcorn and like getting that fountain drink and finding your seat. And there's something I understand that no one has a lot of time anymore. And I think that streaming is different, but I feel like when I'm still in the theater, I pay attention, phone's completely off. I'm really engaged. I also like to see the people around me. And I think I shared with you when I went to go see the new Wes Anderson film, Asteroid Asteroid City this past weekend. It's kind of like that for me, like that homage to the creative types in New York. And I feel like if you're going to go to the Film Forum, you'll have probably a bunch of writers, screenwriters, people studying, like there's maybe professors, actors in training, where it's like that cool community. And then I love when the movie's over and you hear the quietly discussing how much it was influential, and you could tell that people are talking, but I love that, and it's like the same. And then you walk out of the street and it's just loud and aggressive. And it's like you're able to be in that little bubble for so long and get a really like escape.
So with Film Forum, the environment has a really good vibe.
I love the Film Forum. I do. It has like the old school marquee.
Are you a paid sponsor for Film Forum? What is going on?
I'm not, but I love it. Listen, I love the Angelica. I love the Paris Theater, but the Film Forum, I think, always has very interesting films out of all the theaters. They always have some real art house, some real avant-garde, some real indie, and they always do throwbacks where if you go to their website or if you ever check them out, they'll have a movie from 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. They really do have this really amazing archive.
Jay, I don't know how much podcasting we're going to do because you're a very busy person, but I'm glad that we're very, very obviously close friends. But I think hopefully you're going to be part of this whole Find Your Film universe, Find Your Film crew. And so you're recommending Film Forum. I'm over the years. By the way, we've known each other for almost, I'm thinking 2009. So that's at least 14 to 15 years. Okay. Yeah. So I've recommended a couple of bad movies. I think they're brilliant, but Cavalry, I know that's a movie that you left the theater.
It's the first time I've ever walked out of the theater. It was, I think I fell asleep twice.
Okay. You're traumatizing me. Thank you for that.
No, it was funny. I think I called you right after and I just was like, what place in your life?
You didn't call me. You verbally attacked me while I was driving and said, what I just spent
that's normal communication. Ask anyone. I don't know how to talk. Right. I don't know how to talk normally at all.
Yeah.
But I remember being like, I think I was I was in like the mood for something upbeat and like kind of cool. And you were like, oh, I recommend this movie. And I was like, where are you in life right now? Because I asked for upbeat, and that was one of the darkest, most dreary films ever.
It's about a priest who continues to be in the faith, no matter he has an inevitable showdown and possible death at the end of this, but he still continues to go on. And I found that, well, I guess most people find it boring, like you did, but I found it.
I've never, it's like if I was in where's he in Glasgow or something, right?
I
or
think so,
Ireland.
Calvary. I think what is it called? It's called Calvary or Calvary.
Calvary. And I've never felt so alone during that movie. I was like, I gotta go.
Listen. You gotta go. There's a reason why I'm saying this is because a roundabout way of saying I don't actually recommend a ton of movies for you because you're a cinephile and you watch your own stuff, and props to that. But I am going to recommend, because the director of this documentary, again, the documentary is Desperate Souls, Dark City, and the Legend of Midnight Cowboy, is Nancy Buirski. She's credited with a documentary called A Crime on the Bayou, which I still haven't seen. But she did this other film called By Sidney Lumet. And Sidney Lumet is a director. He's one of my favorite directors. He did movies like Dog Day Afternoon, Serpico, Prince of the City, 12 Angry Men. So that's a filmmaker. I think you haven't seen a lot of his films. I think maybe you saw Running on Empty. There's a whole bunch of Sidney Lumet films you haven't seen. But this documentary, remember you said this movie, this Desperate Souls, is still worth watching if you hadn't seen Midnight Cowboy recently, or maybe if you haven't seen Midnight Cowboy. Look, this is one of these things. I don't know if it's streaming, but By Sidney Lumet from Nancy Buirski is worth watching for you, because you'll learn something about one of the most important figures of cinema, Sidney Lumet. And it won't be one of those Calvary or Calgary or Cavalry or I don't know what that is. It's a really good recommendation, by the way. So just for you.
I'm looking forward to it. And I thought your favorite director is De Palma.
My favorite director is De Palma because I'm a creep and I'm a horrible human being, and I like split screen and like blood, and I like following people indiscriminately. I don't know. I do I love the Hitchcockian, very good suspense thriller stuff. But Sidney Lumet, I don't know, Deandra, if you're a big fan of courtroom dramas or specifically dramas in New York, because
12 Angry Men it's a play.
It's a play, but then
it got adapted to the movie, I believe, and it was on off Broadway, I believe.
Okay, so I don't know if you've seen it, but I have
not.
Okay, you would love it. But I don't know if you like courtroom drama, but 12 Angry Men is a great starter piece for Sidney Lumet. But again, Nancy Buirski is the director behind By Sidney Lumet. He has since passed over the years, but he is considered a great filmmaker. So just as great, if not better, I can't say. Then he's on the level of John Schlesinger and Sidney Lumet. So anyways, I recommended a movie for a documentary. Do you have any recent movie recommendations that you would recommend to our listeners or me or whatnot? Anything that you've seen recently that you dug with the 8 Mountains? Would you?
It's not 8 Mountain. That was another one. At least 8 Mountain was a little bit better.
Cute guys in the mountains, and they're bonding. They're making cheese.
Listen, I think I'm a pretty I think I'm smart sometimes, but
Italian men.
It was, but a 3-hour reading movie that it pushed the boundaries for me. Like I definitely after a while, I was like, I need some glasses now. No, it was beautiful. Honestly, it was completely stunning. Cinematography was absolutely stunning. Right. Aerial, everything. But I think it could have been cut like an hour shorter.
Okay. Cool.
No, but I would say, like, honestly, I really recommend. If he's not your favorite, but I loved Asteroid City, and I loved Asteroid City because of
Wes, not because of that.
Well, a lot of people I heard the chatter of on Saturday when I went to the movies at the Angelica was, I think it's because they have like a really like all-star cast. I just love him as a director. He's just over there with right
up there with what? Brian De Palma, Alfred Hitchcock, John Schlesinger, Sidney Lumet.
No, I would say
Aronofsky, Tarantino.
No. I feel like he's very similar to was it Thomas Paul Anderson?
Oh, Paul Thomas Anderson. Thomas Anderson. We call it PTA. Paul Thomas
very,
Anderson.
Very similar. Where he's a little bit has like a more like a contrast with his like visuals, as far as like it's a little bit dark and oversaturated. There's a lot of emotions, but it's very engaging. But I mean, Wes Anderson is just one of those people who, like, this wasn't my most favorite context, I guess, but the visuals, it's like it's to me, I'm a big reader, and it's like I feel like I could imagine someone reading the script, like everything it's vibrant, it's engaging. And just when it has like maybe a little bit of a lull, like he'll have like a little cheekiness in there, have like a little funny sense of humor to kind of lighten it up. I mean, like he always has amazing set designs. I love that there's something that's very innocent about his movies, even if it's a really like kind of hard. I feel like this to me had a lot of emotions, like how Darjeeling Unlimited had emotion.
Yeah.
Darjeeling Unlimited had a lot of underlining like family issues, but it was still somehow lighthearted, and it was very organic. It's like you might not love your family, but they're the ones that you have. And I feel like this was very similar. It was just like a bunch of strangers kind of very oddly coming together, but there's no real connection. And the two people who or I guess two groups of people who kind of connect are one of people who are a little bit very, very smart and a little bit antisocial and a little bit odd. And then two other characters who connect, who are kind of connecting on both being emotionally so numb and unavailable that they're a little dissociated. And I feel like most movies, when you have people who are dissociated, it's always like a negative, kind of like The Whale, you know what I mean? It has to be like dark and like really, it's very depressing. And these were just two people who are like, hey, these are part of our characteristic traits. They don't commiserate with each other. I feel like they kind of are open with each other. And it just leads to a very quick, short bond. And just like his movies, in good spirit, everything's very light and airy and impactful, but not, I mean, I'm being redundant, but it's very airy and light as always.
You're not being redundant, Deandra. You went on this several minute monologue on Wes Anderson because, folks, I was coughing up a lung. This old 51-year-old was coughing so much that she saw my brown face reddening at the grips of just, I don't know.
You passed the baton.
Was it? Yeah. Was like coughing blood? Was it whooping cough? Will you take over this podcast with Bruce and Eric once I die from my cough? Are you up to the task to do that?
I think it's the plague, right? That's your generation.
That's the
bubonic plague. Yeah. The black lung. Yeah.
The black death. Yeah. So I apologize. This might be one of my last podcasts. Again, you will be able to meet Eric Holmes and Bruce Perky. Maybe you'll take over the Find Your Film business, and maybe that's good, because I'm not very good with this. I might be one of these desperate souls looking for another place to live, but until then, I'm still alive. I'm here with Deandra Miranda. Again, Zeitgeist Films and Kino Lorber present Desperate Souls, Dark City, and The Legend of Midnight Cowboy one more time, June 23rd at the Film Forum in New York, which I'm sure Deandra Miranda this weekend will be haunting just for the vibes of that whole area. And then again in LA, which, look, I'm an LA guy since I was 10, and I'm 51. Doesn't have the same vibes as New York, let's just say it right now. But that said, there are art houses like the Laemmle Town Center 5 in Encino, which, by the way, I grew up on. I don't know. We'll get to my movie memories of that Encino Laemmle Town Center 5. I saw Clash of the Titans back in 1981 with my late father. Great memories. Yeah, great memories. And
I love it.
Yeah, at the Laemmle Royale or Royal, I'm just going to say, because it's not Houston and it's house, I'm going to say the Laemmle Royale in Los Angeles instead of the Royal. I'm going to try to be cultured here. Over in Santa Monica Boulevard. We'll have the links on our show notes for all the information. Anything else you want to say before we go? You want to promote something? Do you want your IG, or where can people find you?
So
where
IG,
can people block you? I don't know. It's
listen, my life right now, it's pretty much same. Every week is different. I'm as bipolar as this, this weather that's going on right now. No, but there's two things to promote. So you can find me on IG at DEE_MIRANDA. So that is at D_Miranda. And I think that you're being a little shy, but we're going to be promoting that we are going to be having a new podcast that we are launching, you and I together, Greg. Okay. And I think it's going to be like a nice, like a little experimental podcast. And we're going to figure out how to kind of, what were we talking about? We're like talking about like labels and age and some culture stuff to kind of tie into the movies as well.
Okay, that's an interesting podcast. Yeah, Deandra had no, she's not giving me any kind of, no, she's not giving herself any kind of credit. She's had this really interesting podcast idea. Maybe I'll help her work and shape it out, because she's a very good person, and you have a great voice, and you've always wanted to have a journalism reporter or podcaster kind of thing. So maybe, who knows, maybe we'll figure something out. Maybe it might be a different kind of podcast that you and I'll be working on. So
I think it's a nice collaborative thing as two best friends. It's like, again, I think that people really the reason why they love the movies and they love podcasts is there's that relatability. And I think that that's coming into a new thing. I feel like when we used to write, it'd be amazing, but now like everything's really visual. You know, people are on the go and listening, and it's an avenue that I think that we should be discovering.
Okay, well, it's a really interesting avenue. You and I working on another podcast. My actual advice for you is let me help you set up the podcast, and we'll deal with the thematic of your podcast.
Yes.
Then make sure you kick me out, because once you learn all the details, you'll have a better host. We're going to give you some...
easy breezy. That's like my dating life. It's totally good.
Okay, good. Just make sure.
You're here for 3 weeks and then you're gone.
Yeah, it's all business. Remember, D. Okay. So anyways,
listen, this black heart, you know, I can't help it.
Yeah. I don't want to give you spoilers, but you're in this situation. You'll be Buck and I'll be Ratso. Okay. I'm not going to give spoilers.
I wore the hat for it. I wore the Midnight.
I love the hat. I love the hat.
Listen,
yes.
I always wear hats. You know, the weather's like pretty shitty outside. And I thought what's better than, you know, little Joe Buck cowboy hat.
Okay, again, thank you guys. Tell us what you think of this podcast, and hit Deandra if you want to hit her up on IG. I will put it up on the show notes, and who knows, we'll be doing a lot more stuff together. Take care, guys, and thanks for listening to us here on Find Your Film. Some more interview segments are going to be in this episode as well. Just go to our show notes for all that information. Okay, take care, guys.